and welcome to the next Bushido Entrepreneur Maxim. This month for July, I've picked one that is possibly not what we would call a traditional samurai maxim. It's one by a much more recent martial artist. And I did so because some of you have probably seen UFC 264. And on that was Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. And it got me thinking about kind of, traditional martial arts versus very much more just MMA training. And the thing that I will always have the most respect for is the traditional ways. Now, I'm all for contemporary and the modernization and how we adapt and change things into the kind of present modern world, which is half of what this kind of series is about. But I do have a really strong sense of affinity to the traditional ways for a reason. And part of that for Bushido in particular is the things of when you think of humility and reverence and courage and bravery and indomitable spirit and compassion and integrity and all these different things, they tend to be a really solid root core in a Bushido text and in a Bushido kind of way of life. And I'm not obviously casting dispersions across all MMA fighters. I'm just saying that I sometimes have some observations that when I see very traditionally trained martial artists who then go into MMA, just tend to have a different edge around them than the ones that have mainly just trained MMA. Now, that might sound counterintuitive because obviously mixed martial arts is a bunch of martial arts. So you could say, well, how is that possible? But I think the reason for that is when you followed a traditional belt system and gone all the way up to black belt and beyond, you've gone through a certain evolution and a journey, which when you break down the different arts, and you're taking a piece of this and a piece of that and a piece of the other, which is awesome for the point of mixed martial arts for sure, and I understand why that is done. Sometimes I feel that it's missing some of those core roots, and I've just personally often favoured the the UFC fighters and stuff that come from that traditional background, just because normally you can just sense it, you can just tell there's a different amount of reverence and respect. So the reason why I chose this particular, I'm calling it a maxim because I think it is up there, is because I feel like because it's written by a modern martial artist. This guy used to be a UFC fighter, but he came from a very, very traditional background. It was Lyoto Machida, from a lot of you who know his name. He was called the Dragon when he was fighting. And the maxim goes, the samurai always has to rise and move on because new challenges will come. Now, I've selected this particularly from the idea of Bushido Entrepreneur and when we think about conscious living, conscious leadership, conscious business, because the fact is there will always be new challenges. This idea that we have that we need to kind of do a little bit of hard work or move on to something and then it's all kind of peachy and rosy, it doesn't really exist. What we have to do, you often see a lot of kind of talking about enjoying the journey and loving the journey and so on and so forth, because the fact is that the journey is always the end and the beginning. So we've talked about this before in the idea of kind of the mini deaths from a samurai perspective in Bushido, that each day is a death and each morning is a new beginning. And from my Egyptian heritage, the thing represented that kind of new dawn by the dung beetle rolling what would be Ra across the sand, was this idea that you are going to start a new beginning. It was always that element of new beginnings, new possibilities. And the key thing there is, if we have the idea with a mini death, is if we have that happen, then we are not dragging baggage into the next thing. And the reason why I mentioned the UFC one, the 264, is because when you get grudge matches, when you get these Trinity kind of round robin things going on, where people have built up an enormous kind of an emotional connection and attachment, the strongest mindset is they often say, you win the war before you've even got onto the battlefield. And the reason for that is because when you look at somebody's ability to keep their poise and keep their emotions and be able to keep in that center point and be able to move forwards from that clarity, you get a whole heap of different kind of energy and strategy than you do from the person, and obviously in this case I'm talking about fighting, but you do from the fighter who's revved up, who's angry, who just wants to knock your head off, who's really riled and you've really got under their skin and they just can't bear you. And the problem with that is you then go into battle, as it was, and you're not of clear mind. So the idea with kind of Lyoto writing that is because I remember many, many years ago, I might be going back 15 years, maybe more, can't remember. But I remember a clip that was done for him, like on one of his fights, can't remember which one. And it was obviously just taking you around kind of his day-to-day training, and it opened up with him in meditation, and obviously he's got mixed Japanese descent, so there was like Japanese music, and obviously his father was a Japanese master instructor, so he grew up in the discipline, he grew up understanding the way. And so what I feel like that gives you an edge in life, as well as kind of in the ring or on the mats, is because there's a deep sense of calm and the center point. I always call it the center point because I've always felt that when we can bring ourselves into that center point and breathe and take that moment before we survey the land, before we make any decisions, and so we can actually do simultaneous things here. We're going to go by intuition with what are we picking up, what is the right move for us to make, balanced with strategic in terms of where am I going to go, like the chessboard, the pieces. And I've always likened sparring to chess. In all my years from when I was a competitive fighter many years ago, but it always was the chess game in my head about the training in terms of strategic moves. Now, when you're obviously in the thick of it, I mean, obviously for a lot of people, if you've ever been a competitor, sometimes those kind of plans can go out the window and you are in the moment, you're very, very in the moment, and you are responding and moving and so on and so forth, which is good. And the thing about that is you are pre-trained, which is why they call it muscle memory, because then you're calling on a lot of body memory and just kind of ways in which you've practiced. But I want to bring this back into kind of the Bushido part of entrepreneurship, and to me that these people, so whether you're an athlete and whether you are any kind of artist or any person that's bringing something forth, the entrepreneurial aspect is, we could call it the business side of it for sure. So we can just use that as an analogy. But when we're bringing that forward, what we need to look at is what two sides of us are we bringing. So what I mean by that is somebody can be like an amazing, let's say, martial artist, but they might not be able to run a dojo or run a business or have very good leadership because they're and I don't say just like that's nothing, but they are a martial artist. Likewise, we could get somebody who could be phenomenal, let's say at, I don't know, let's say building, which way am I going? This way, where am I going? I'm trying to point the opposite way. So, building guitars. So let's say somebody's phenomenal at building guitars or making these drums or painting, whatever it might be, but they don't necessarily have the tools and the strategies to create the business because they're different skill sets. So this idea to me, in terms of the samurai always has to rise and move on because new challenges will come, is because that's a dead cert. New challenges are going to always be on your horizon. So what have you got in your arsenal? What have you got in your toolkit? How are you at any given moment going to be dealing with these things? And I think very from experience, from an entrepreneurial perspective and from a martial artist perspective, I see two common denominators there. The people that can rise and move on are the people that make the mission bigger than them. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. If the mission you are on is bigger than you, then you can actually deal with all the challenges that come your way. If you make it about you, in conscious leadership, we have this thing called above and below the line. And below the line means when you're acting as though something's being done to you or something's being done because of you, meaning that you are front and center. This is all about you. When we go above the line in conscious leadership and we go that things are moving through you or as you, now we're moving on to this detached unattachment, the art of Wu Wei, the art of non-attachment. We're going into the idea that actually I need to make sure I'm present, but as unattached as possible. Now, don't confuse that with not passionate or caring or dedicated or any of those things. We're not talking about those things. What we're talking about is the ability to be able to keep rising and moving on and moving forward regardless of what keeps coming in your path. And I've noticed time and time again when I look externally to things that affect people and how they react, and then sometimes people will say to me, are you okay? Do you need time? Whatever. And I'll be like, no, I'm okay. I can make the meeting or whatever it might be. Because I'm not affected in the same way. And every time I see that, I have to sort of have a nod towards Bushido and go, oh, it's because of the way I've been trained, it's because of the way I am. Doesn't mean that there's no emotions there. It doesn't mean that there's somebody who's like dead, who's got no emotional context or fabric. It just means that you are trained in a way, and you have a capacity and you have an ability to not let certain things come in and sink you. It means you can be aware of them and you can feel them, but you are going to keep marching forward, if you like, regardless. And this idea that, new challenges will always come, because the thing is, you on the entrepreneurial path, you have one guarantee, and that is change. It's very difficult for a business to say, be set up in the year 2000 and in the year 2050 it's exactly the same. Nothing's changed. No personnel's changed. No anything's changed. Now, okay, we know we have some brands out there that will go, we do the same thing since 1856. Okay, there might be exceptions to the rule, but I can bet you that, let's just take a bread company, somebody that might go, oh yeah, this has been in my generation, family generations forever. Well, I doubt very much they're using the same mixing bowls by hand. I'm sure they've got a factory. I'm sure they're not having, I have no idea what they advertised in the 1800s, but whatever it is, you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to be on digital and they're going to have ads and Facebook groups and whatever. So things have progressed and things have moved on, and they always will do. So your ability as a Bushido entrepreneur is twofold with this quote. One, the samurai always has to rise and move on. You need to have it in your arsenal that whatever comes at you on this path, you're going to rise above it, handle it, and move forward. Doesn't mean you don't need to you can't stop, you can't have a break, you can't take a sort of rest at the plateau. You can. But then also be mindful that new challenges will come, because they always will. So for this week, or the rest of this month, I think what I would really like, to sort of focus on is thinking about, the kind of the modern and the traditional and the blending of the two. And some of you will be avid UFC watchers, some of you won't be. Some of you as martial artists will get totally what I'm talking about. Some of you may not, but I mean, I deliberately want to kind of use these martial arts kind of lessons of life lessons because I think they're so integral. And we always call it black belt thinking in terms of the mindset that is required to be at certain levels from an entrepreneurship level, because I've seen so many people over the years have a good heart and a good idea and a good kind of thing that they want to do, but then they don't ever get it anywhere, or they don't really get it over the ground, or they don't really maximize it, or they don't really hit the peak potential. And most of the time it's this, or what's going on in here. So a lot of the times when we talk about the inner to the outer, this is what we're really talking about. We're talking about what's going on inside you and what's going on up here. And what of these things is preventing that external rise, that external kind of growth and development in what you're doing. So just coming back to the mission again, the idea of us, the mission being stronger than us, is just the simple fact that if the mission is more than you, then you're going to get out your own way. If you're bigger than it, then you're always going to be the key problem. Nice, rightly or wrongly. That's just the way it is. So moving forwards, let's have a think about if you've got any kind of traditional background, you'll totally get me and you'll totally understand that. And if you've lost touch with any of that and you want to kind of spend some time this month kind of recapturing what that feels like in that essence, do that. If you are much more from a modern mindset, what could you do to sort of look into some of the traditional teachings and the traditional wisdom and what could you bring through? And from an entrepreneurial perspective, why don't you write a little list of the things you've already overcome so far, and have a look at a bit of a timeline and go, okay, the last year, the last 2 years, how many things have I actually kept moving forward? What have I actually accomplished? What have I actually gone through? And I think that's a really good thing to look at. From it is, it's not all about just patting ourselves on the back and going, oh my god, let's give myself a certificate. It's just about that appreciation and acknowledgement that from an indomitable spirit perspective, humans are incredibly tough, and we can prevail a lot of things more than what most people think they can. That's why sometimes we find ourselves in situations we don't like, because people give their power away. So for me personally, the whole point of the Bushido entrepreneurship in terms of conscious living, conscious leadership and conscious business is it's about people taking their power back and being in that sovereign strength of who they are and what they've come here to do, and then helping them to achieve that on the biggest, grandest scale that they want to do. Okay, so if there's anything you want to sort of chat to us about, or if you think anybody else would benefit from this video, please do like it, comment on it, share it, and please do get in touch with us if there's anything you'd like to go through on your conscious mission. And if there's anything about the Bushido side that you'd like to chat through or have any questions on, then please do join us in our Facebook group, or just find us on social media. Or get in touch with us at the Quantum Dojo, and we'd love to hear from you. So have an absolutely wonderful rest of month, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.